Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 108 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on why the police's decision to stop taking mental health 999 calls is problematic. And it's Saturday, the 3rd of June 2023, as I record this. So apologies if that is not the title that I actually use on the blog post and the podcast apps, because I've not actually decided on the final title yet. So today's podcast episode I think is absolutely fascinating, because I've already recorded the content part of today's episode because I needed to get it transcribed. But I think this is fascinating because if you're outside of the UK, or you didn't watch the news on Monday, because this news story was only in the news for a single day, which I think is quite disgusting, to be honest, considering how many people this is actually going to hurt. So what happened is that the Metropolitan Police Force, which serves the London area in the UK, has decided that from the 1st of September 2023, they will no longer accept mental health crisis calls, which might sound logical, but as I talk about in today's podcast episode, that's not. It's very dangerous. The police are the best people to actually answer these calls, and so in today's episode I do talk about a lot of it, and this is something I was very angry about, and it actually kept me up one night. So really interesting, fascinating episode, and it's really nice to do something current for a change, instead of looking at past research those. And as always, you can always find the references at connorwhiteley.net/podcast, and then just click on today's episode, because there are references for today's episode. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest, and the first one is brilliant. To share or not to share. Managing finances can be a challenge for just about any newlyweds, but a new study suggests that the way these couples manage money may have more of an impact on their relationship's longevity than they might anticipate. In the first experimental look at the topic, a US-based research team finds that increased financial interdependence could help newlyweds keep their relationship stronger for longer. So this is something I definitely think is really interesting, because something that I have noticed is that new couples or newlyweds, they don't want to mix up their finances. Though, and this is why it's a joke in my family that my mum and dad are the weirdest couples alive, because they sleep in the same bed, they have a shared bank account, etc., etc. Basically, all the traditional ideas about marriage, but all their friends, they don't. Which I always think is actually really funny, though. So, and I do understand this. Like, when I eventually get a partner, I think it will be really hard for me to share money in that sort of sense and share a lot of stuff. But that talks more about my past than anything else. So this is definitely scary, and I understand why people do it. But to be honest, if you're going to marry someone, it sort of implies a level of trust. And also, though, I don't think you have to give them all of your money in a shared account. Like, you can still have one shared main account and then have one of your own private stash. So that might be a really good idea if you want to ease ease into it. Of course, none of this is official advice, but if these research findings do stand up, but like cross-culturally and in different countries, then this could be a really important way to actually make sure that a marriage does survive. So definitely something to think about if you are a newlywed, married a couple, or you think you might get married in the future. Which I sort of hope that we all do if you're into marriage. So the second one is remember me. Imperfect recall impacts some demographics harder. There's nothing more embarrassing than introducing yourself to someone you've already met. From socialising at work to making friends at the gym, our lives depend on remembering not only the people we've met, but relevant information about them. Oh yeah, I got something quite funny to mention about that. New research suggests that both women and those that belong to ethnic minority groups are more likely to be remembered when they comprise a small minority of a group, and more likely to be confused with each other when in larger numbers. The study's authors argue that this could have implications beyond psychology, and that these effects may impede said demographics in the labour market. Emily Reynolds digests the investigation on the website. So, of course, I'm not going to click on the website link. However, this I think is absolutely fascinating, though, because I will fully admit I am absolutely terrible when it comes to things I want to remember about people, because I can remember tons of people, and like some of my university friends that I really like and I really care about. They actually said to me like yesterday, because I was out of them, your memory's scary. And I didn't have the heart to tell them, no, it's not scary, it's just that because I care about them, I'm much more likely to remember like their stuff compared to other people. And yeah, I seriously forget some other stuff that people tell me. But this is really an important finding, though, because I think this is definitely applicable to everyday life. Thankfully, I've never been mortified and embarrassed by introducing myself to someone that I've already met. I think I would have died of embarrassment. But I know this definitely happens. If women and ethnic minorities are less likely to be remembered when in a large group, then this actually is very concerning. Well, amount though, because if a company is like in at tons of people that day, and you have tons like women, tons of ethnic minorities, and a lot of white men, then that is very problematic in the sense that the ethnic minorities and the women are less likely to be remembered. They might be great candidates, but they might be less likely to be remembered. So is there a way to address that and counterbalance? I'm not sure. We need more research on it. But it's really good that we've identified this potential error in human cognitive processes, and now what we can sort of hopefully start to apply it to find real world solutions. Yeah, but my memories are scary, apparently, which I quite like. I like that because I really care about like those people. But otherwise, yeah. But remembering relevant information about them is very slapdash at times. So the final one is hearing the unspoken. Nonverbal communication is a booming field, not just for research, but for authors, presenters, and businesses. There's a lot of money to be made out of offering training on everything from how to read a celebrity's body language to the tells that will reveal lies in a courtroom. Wow. But there's a problem with this. The field of nonverbal communication is plagued with persistent misconceptions and incorrect truths. And that I say in firm air quotes. When those truths are used to guide the reasonings of the juries, employees, romantic partners, or even researchers, they have the potential to be very damaging indeed. And yeah, this is a massive problem because last year I was doing some research on the psychology of deception, and wow, I mean, all these. I don't want to be too harsh, but these people that offer these trainings and these courses are basically fraudsters to some extent because these so-called professionals are basically no better than everyday people at telling lies. And sure, sometimes, and I mean in some research studies, that these actually do show that they're better and they're great at detecting lies, but 99% of the time they're no better than you and me at detecting lies. So it's a shame that this is such a booming industry, but again, people love the novelty, the excitement, and how this will give them a so-called edge. And of course, people are making money off it, so they're going to keep doing it. Definitely interesting and food for thought. So I hope you enjoy the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So we're moving on to the personal update. This week, not being like too exciting, just working on like tons of like different topics and preparing for a bunch of really fun things like coming up, like my trip to Oxford that I really am excited about. But I do want to make a point about something in a moment though. So yesterday was the last time I'm actually going to see a bunch of my university friends because we all went kayaking as a part of a like lab social, and it was so much fun. We all went kayaking, loved it. I've not done kayaking in years because of a bunch of stuff. But it was so much fun. It's so great to see everyone. We had great laughs, great conversations, and it was just an absolutely wonderful day. And then we went back to our university campus, sat in one of the university's bars, and then we spoke for like even longer though. So it's absolutely great. And but there's a few main points I actually want to talk about here. So, but first of all, if you're a current university student, or if you're thinking about going to like university, then definitely do it. And if you're concerned about making friends, and you think you're going to be like struggling, there will always be an element of that wherever you go in life. I promise you that. Believe me, I really, really do. However, at university, there's tons of different opportunities to socialise, tons of different clubs or societies to join, and university is definitely one of those things where you get out what you put in there to it. And your third and your final year at a university, when you've actually got that supervisor, it can actually be a great time, especially if they do socials. And I think that I do not recommend this because this could have backfired on me quite badly. But I basically chose my academic supervisor. One, because I worked with him for my placement year. Two, because of the socials. And of course, I am not the most socially outgoing person. I will admit that wholeheartedly. Part of that's just me. Part of that's just autism. And a part of that is just more about my past and my past relationships, including like friendships, because that's just a whole other like borderline ugly though. But it still proves my point though that at a university you really can find like your people you can still will have like tons of friends though. So if you're concerned about that sort of like university, then don't be. But you've sort of got to put the work in it, so to speak. And to be honest, it really is not work like half the time though. So you've got the social thing that I wanted to like, comment on, but also if you've had bad experiences in the past with friends and stuff, like if you've been betrayed a lot, if you've been stabbed in the back a lot, and if like vulnerability is a problem for you, and this isn't just limited to neurodivergent people though, because autism definitely plays a like factor in my social like, relationships. However, if you've still dealt with all of that, and if you're still struggling with that stuff, university can still be great because university teaches you that you can still have great relationships. And the thing why this social was actually really important to me is because this is basically the first time in years, or to be honest, probably ever, where these friendships haven't ended abruptly, been ended by other people, or just been killed off entirely, or well, entirely like against my will. And to be honest, that probably made absolutely no sense to anyone unless they've actually gone through that. But basically, these are the first friendships that, to be honest, ending's the wrong word because they've changed. The relationships have changed because people are moving on to do like their own stuff, including myself though. So the fact that for the first time that I can actually find comfort in these friendships changing peacefully and naturally, I think that's really helpful. Which is one of the reasons why I sent them all a really quite heartfelt message though, and I almost made someone cry apparently with my message though. So overall, my point here is that if you've been traumatized and if you've been betrayed a lot, and if you really find friendships and other relationships really hard and quite traumatic, then university can be a great place for hope if you let it and if you actually admit to yourself, yes, what's happened to me in the past is bad, but you can move forward. And to be honest, you've got to remember that not everyone is a horrible person who will stab you in the back. So that's something that I really love about this year is that it has helped me with my past a little. And to be honest, I realise this is probably just me waffling because I don't talk about what's happened to me in the past. Well, this is missing a lot of context. So hopefully someone will find this useful. But university is great. I love all my university friends. I will definitely keep in contact. So I am looking forward to the future. And as always, I would always love to know your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwiley@connorwiley.net. You can always either come to the show notes at connorwiley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi Wiley. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by Police Psychology, a guide to police behaviour. So this is an absolute brilliant sponsor for today's episode because of this great, really easy to understand book actually helps you to understand the forensic psychology research behind police behaviour. For example, why is the police a culture so sexist, homophobic, racist, etc.? Etc. Like, how do the police deal with crimes? Why do they deal with them? And it also talks about a lot about the different interviewing techniques that the police use. For example, the cognitive interview, which is based on psychology research the standard police interrogation or police interview, and so many other great things, though, especially the armed response chapter that is a particular favourite. And then we also talk about how crimes impact the mental health of police officers. So if you really want to understand police culture, that's definitely the main reason why I wrote the book there, because I wanted to understand why the police as a whole were so sexist, racist, and homophobic. So it's a really interesting book. I loved writing about it. I loved researching it, and this is very, very popular. So I know you're going to love it too. So that is Police Psychology, available from all major ebook retailers, and you can buy the paperback and the hardback version from Amazon, local bookstore, or local library if you request it. And you can buy the ebook directly from me at payhip.com/Con Wiley. So whilst buying books supports the creation and the editing of the podcast, my time in creating the show is sponsored by my wonderful patrons. And a massive thank you to all of my patrons because your patronage shows that you like the podcast and that you want it to continue. And if you wanted to get early benefits like early access to the blog post, a more personal relationship between me as the podcast creator and you as the listener, and a whole bunch of other great benefits, then you can become a patron at patreon.com/the Psychology World Podcast. So that's enough for personality. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So we're moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about how the Met Police deciding to stop taking 999 calls from mental health incidences could impact people. Or that's the sort of title. In case you can't tell, I actually haven't decided on an official title yet. So this is going to be great fun. It's definitely going to be me taking stuff from the news, putting my own thoughts on them, and just sharing in information with you. And because I've done the content part of today's episode before the in-night introduction, though, I just want to make it clear though that this is something that I was really angry about, really concerned about, and this did actually keep me up Monday night when I first heard about it. So I actually did want to talk about it and just see what happens. And as always, I can find the references and the transcript because I didn't write a blog post for this one at conwhiteley.net/podcast. So just to give you a bit of background in information, the Metropolitan Police, which serves the London area in England, the United Kingdom, has decided that from September, so the 1st of September 2023, the Met Police will no longer respond to 999 calls about mental health incidences. At first, I think that sounds logical because they're police, they're not healthcare. But then when you start thinking about the state of the National Health Service in the UK and how police are so much better equipped than psychologists to deal with this stuff when there's a mental health crisis, this is extremely concerning, I think. And this is quite dangerous because, let's face it though, whilst you've got a suicidal person who's going to kill themselves. And what number would someone call? 999 is the only one you could possibly think of. No one would call the NHS because they're doctors and they wouldn't be able to respond quickly. You wouldn't do the fire brigade and an ambulance call. The NHS is in such a disarray in the UK, an ambulance would never get done. And again, it's not a medical emergency yet. You need someone to talk that person who's about to kill themselves from jumping off a cliff. So again, if you're a family member, you could call their psychologist because the suicidal person might have given you their number. But again, though, if I'm a psychologist in bed, I've just been woken up and I have to jump in my car. Okay, that's fine, fair enough. One, you've got London traffic. Two, from as far as I know, not everyone has a car in London. So if my client is about to jump off, let's say, a bridge 20 miles away, I'm not sure if that's right. How am I, as a psychologist, going to travel 20 miles in London on the tube? And for the American audience, just imagine trying to travel 20 miles in New York traffic. Okay, I think that's quite a good example. A psychologist cannot do it, but the police can because they have police sirens. So unless the police are going to give psychologists sirens to get to mental health crises, then that's not going to work. Now, I know in Tier 4 CAM services, and I've covered this on the podcast before, that there can be suicide, not so much suicide pacts, that's the wrong word, but an agreement between the psychologist and the client that if they're going to be suicidal, you have to call them though, but just so they can talk you out of it. But again, though, if you're a member of the public and you see someone looking like they're about to jump, you just do not know any other number to call. So that's why I'm concerned, because 999 is the only number you would honestly call in that situation. However, though, I do have to admit that this is a quote from the letter that the Met Police Commissioner did say, open quote, "Where there is an immediate threat to life, officers will continue to respond," close quote. So that, I think, is great. I think that is brilliant because, of course, if there's a suicidal person, it means that they will likely still be responded to by police. However, immediate threat to life, that's subjective. And as we saw in a few episodes ago, well, when I was talking about the child and adolescent mental health services crisis in the UK, and how some services require a child to have 2 believable suicide attempts before they get psychological treatment, it comes back to that believable question. What is a believable question? And also, what is an immediate threat to life? If someone's on a bridge but hanging on, is that immediate? Because immediate to me would be like they're going to climb up, jump straight away. That would be immediate. And it also depends on how will a person on the phone watching this relay it to the 999 operator. And then it'd be the 999 operator's job to say if it's immediate or not. How would they know if it's immediate or not? So it's just that sort of subjective stuff I'm quite concerned about and questioning. So something else that the Met Police said was, open quote, "In the interests of patients and the public, we need to urgently readdress the imbalance of responsibility where police officers are left delivering health responsibilities. Health services must take primacy for caring for the mentally ill," I hate that word, "allowing officers to focus on their core responsibilities of preventing and detecting crime, and keep communities safe and support victims." Close a quote, and I do just want to go on to something else so quickly. So this is another egg extract that I got from the Sky News report. Med, a spokesperson, told the BBC that officers spend an average of 10 hours with a patient when they are sectioned under the Mental Health Act. In London alone, 500 to 600 times a month, officers are waiting for this length of time to hand over to patients, and it cannot continue, said a statement. And then another quote was, open quote, "Police are not trained to deliver mental health care," close a quote. So let me just unpack that in information. So first of all, I completely agree. It is not the police's job to do mental health care. I know they are not trained for it, and I know they basically are clueless in this responsibility. I completely get that. I really do. So I do understand that it's unfair on them, because these are not trained mental health professionals. However, because of the reasons I said earlier, when there is a mental health crisis, like if someone's having a breakdown, if someone's suicidal, if someone's having a psychotic break or hallucinating, and they're causing a risk to others, police are able to respond quicker than psychologists. And again, though, the NHS just is not structured for a psychologist who's not on call, for example, to actually respond quickly. And if any psychologists have actually worked in improving access to psychological therapies services, which is also known as IAP in the UK, then a psychologist might be working 8 hours a day, and as I understand it, they have eight back-to-back therapy sessions. So if you get a call during that time that one of your other clients is suicidal, then you are actually in a massive problem, because you cannot just quit a therapy session. You can't say to your client, right, I'm really sorry, but I have to go to save another client. As much as you might want to, if you're just making progress with that client, then the last thing you want to do is break the session, answer your phone, and then just dash off, because that client might not want to open up again. It might have taken so much courage for them to actually want to talk to you, and for you about to tell them that if you just dash off when they're about to tell you, they might go, well, what's the point of therapy? It took me so long to trust you and commit and actually want to tell you this stuff that happened to me, and you just go and dash off. That's outrageous. I'm not coming anymore. And that would be really damaging to clients, I think. So, again, police are better suited for this to deal with mental health crises. But again, though, I think this just goes to show that the NHS does need a lot more money. It needs complete restructuring because, as every psychologist tells you, at least in my experience, 50% of the workforce does not need to be backroom staff and managers. Like, you do not need as many managers. And 10 hours, I do understand why that's annoying because, of course, 10 hours with a patient in an accident and emergency department is unacceptable. So, in an ideal world, the police would just be able to come into a mental health hospital or a ward, pass it over to healthcare professionals, and then just go on their way. But of course, because of NHS cuts done by governments over the years, we don't have mental health hospitals. Of course, I think that's a good thing because, of course, the psychiatry stuff and how they just used to drug up people. But again, mental health services are basically dead and on their knees. This is not helping matters for the police. So something else I actually wanted to talk about is this. Open quote. We are failing them first by sending police officers, not medical professionals, to those in mental health crises and expecting them to do their best in circumstances where they are not the right people to be dealing with the patient. We are failing Londoners a second time by taking large amounts of officers' times away from preventing and solving crimes, as well as dealing properly with victims in order to fill gaps for others. The extent to which we are collectively failing Londoners and inappropriately placing demand on policing is very stark. Close quote. Again, I do agree. This is a massive, massive problem for the police, and this just goes to show that mental health services just aren't. They are fit for purpose, but they need more money, they need more resources to deal with the challenges they face. And again, though, I think that you need something to replace this with, which I really hope I've actually mentioned this in the introduction, which is why something that another police force has actually brought in, but Met Police are not doing this, which is really dangerous. And another bit of data which I find quite interesting. And again, all of this is from the Met Police Commissioner. Open quote. He added the Met had received a record number of 999 calls on the 28th to 29th of April, but only 30% were crime related. Close quote. Again, that's really bad that 70% were down to mental health. So we clearly have a mental health crisis in the UK, but again, mental health services just are not fit to handle this many people, so the police have to pick up the slack, sadly. So on to this other scheme. So what this scheme is that Humberside Police, what they did was that they created this a scheme called Right Care, Right Person, and it is designed to be implemented nationally, but the Met Commissioner has lost patience. Because the way how this is meant to work is that a UK police force is meant to stop taking 999 calls for mental health crises when this thing is actually introduced. The Met Police is not doing this, so London will not benefit from the scheme I'm about to tell you. Of course, something might change by the time September happens, but this is right now as of 1st of June 2023. So, Humberside Police identified that before the introduction of Right Care, Right Person, the force was deployed to an average of 1,566 incidences per month relating to issues such as concerns for welfare, mental health incidences, and missing persons. Yes, and I should also say that this information is coming from a website which you can find on the blog post called college.police.org. I think that's the reference, but this is an official police college website. RCRP is a program of work that has been carried out over a 3-year period involving partners in ambulances, mental health, acute hospitals, and social services. These partnerships ensure RCRP can achieve its aims to provide the best care to the public by ensuring the most appropriate response to calls for service. This reduces stress on the police and health agencies responding to these requests. So again, that is brilliant. I have no problem with this, but you need the partnerships there. Like the Met Police can't just decide to stop these calls, expect nothing bad to happen without these partnerships. Because it's these partnerships that actually make this scheme work. So the fact they're not doing it is stupid, I think. Open quote. Early internal evaluation of the initiative in Humberside Police has shown a more collaborative, informed, and appropriate response to RCRP incidences. It has also shown a large reduction in the deployment of police resources to these between January 2019 and October 2022. This has allowed the force to relocate saved resources to specialist teams, such as missing persons. So again, that is brilliant that the police are actually getting more resources to but these really specialised teams, though, just so they can actually find missing persons. However, what I do want to focus on the type of calls that the police normally respond to, because yes, I've been focusing on suicidal people, but there are actually a lot of other ones and a lot more common ones. So one of the first type of calls is actually concern for welfare, and this includes when mental health services report to the police that an individual hasn't attended any sessions, so the mental health services are actually concerned about them. So what they call the police to go and check on them. Again, though, if the police just scrap this, which they are, then mental health services will have absolutely no idea what's actually happened to this client, which has not shown up for any sessions. Voluntary mental health services, and I actually do want to read the thing from the website. Open quote. Voluntary patients taken by police to emergency departments of an acute hospital and freeze ambulance. Police were asked to remain as the individual was assessed. Walk out of healthcare facilities. Now, this one I think is really important because, and an example of this is when an emergency department calls the police. Police, because a man or woman has actually walked out with the hospital equipment still in them. Because if someone has a cannula in their hand, then they're clearly not well, but they've just walked out of the hospital. Again, are you really going to get nurses and doctors to actually go out searching for that person? No, but you're going to call the police because the police have access to all the security cameras, and it means that the nurses and doctors can actually get back to treating people. So another example of where the police were actually called out is for the Mental Health Act, section 136. And this is actually used by the police to detain people. And the police have to stay with the person if there are no clinicians free to accept them. And on average, this meant the police had to remain with the person that they detained. I just want to point that out that the police themselves have detained this person for 12 hours, which is bad, and the police shouldn't have to stay with someone for 12 hours. But again, there's basically a national crisis, so that the demand of mental health services we have not got the supply of mental health professionals. It's absent without leave. So this is when sectioned patients have actually gone able after a Section 17 escorted leave with a staff. So like if this person has actually escaped in inverted commas, then the police have to go and find them. Which again, the police are the best people suited to actually go and find them. The police have to take this call. So the fact that the Met isn't, I think it's really bad. And finally, the police have asked to convoy patients from acute hospitals to mental health services. So something else I actually want to talk about is threshold tests for police intervention. So under this right care, right person plan, for the police to be able to get in a boat, there have to be this threshold test, meaning that it basically has to be serious enough, which I think always gets rather interesting. So the first one is it a medical emergency? Which I think is quite weird, because surely the whole idea of this is that if it's a medical emergency, then the ambulance or another service or partnership has to get involved. But again, when we're focusing on mental health, if someone's self-harmed, then that is a medical emergency and the police are best to respond to that. So, I guess. Is a child at risk of significant harm? Good. The police absolutely have to deal with that, because again, that's more of the threat to others, like if a parent is hallucinating or something and they're having a really bad violent hallucination. Again, really rare, but again, it still happens. Is there a real and immediate risk to life or serious harm to the identified person? Again, it's too subjective. It's too subjective about immediate risk, especially if you're just a member of the public. You don't know the person. They might be hanging on the bridge, but you cannot say to the police, if you don't know them, that yes, I know for the fact that this person will jump in a matter of minutes. You just can't say that. So an operator might not twist it, because that is the flat out wrong word, but again though, they might convey it to the police as right, this is not an immediate thing, especially when we have this many burglaries going on. Is that the person suspected to have a mental health problem? Difficulties in language, use more positive language. Like, these people aren't criminals. They're people that are suffering and need help. But again though, if you're a person in the street, and if you see someone, or if someone's having a mental health crisis and a family member isn't about, you're not going to know that information. Has a crime been committed? No, chances are, because people with mental health conditions don't really. It's a massive myth. Is this a missing person report? So I guess that means if someone with a mental health condition has actually gone missing, right, and they've been found, so that the police get involved just so they can close as that case. So again, it's not perfect. I think there are situations where the police just should automatically get involved, and I think that the Met just should not get rid of this, because I just think it's too risky. Just honestly too risky. However, because psychology is a science, and in clinical psychology, you've got the scientist practitioner model, let me just say about the data from this pilot. Open quote. Internal evaluation has highlighted the following positive outcomes for police and partners. An average of 508 fewer deployments per month, 1,132 officer hours saved on average per month, 32,828 officer hours saved between June 2020 and October 2022. reduction in the proportion of RCRP incidences deployed from 78% in January 2019 to 31% in October 2022. I have to say, overall, I think this does work. I think this scheme is the best thing we're going to have, because I completely agree. And I do understand why the police are annoyed at this, because they're not mental health professionals. They're there to solve crime. So they should be solving crime. They shouldn't be dealing with mental health. But again, though, the NHS in the UK, I'm sure my UK listeners can back me up here, it's mental health services are definitely really struggling, and to be honest, it does break my heart every time when I have to report on this, comment on this, and it's why I wanted to do today's episode. I wanted to explore my own thoughts on this, because to be honest, now that I'm not at university a lot, I can't really have these debates with different people though. So thank you, podcast listeners, for actually giving me a place to actually talk about this. So there just aren't enough space in mental health services to actually deal with this. So it does fall to the police. I understand that the police are annoyed, and yes, something's got to be done. But I think it's more the case that instead of it being police blaming mental health services, which I'm not saying they're doing, they actually aren't, to be honest. It's more that the government needs to sort out mental health services. They basically need to get a massive scalpel, cut off all the fat of the NHS, including the bosses, the manager, put their salaries actually where they need to be, actually back into the services themselves. And we would actually be a lot better off, because, again, I say this every single time, but of requiring children and adolescents to have suicide attempts before children get mental health is disgusting. Actually, that goes for anyone though, because tons of people have mental health difficulties. But the threshold for mental health services is they basically have to be suicidal. That's disgusting, it's wrong, and of course we need to be helping people before they ever get to that point where they think suicide is the only way out. It's not right, it's not fair. So overall, my final conclusion is that the Met Police, I fully agree, they should stop taking 999 calls for mental health crises, but not without something to replace it. If they decide to stop taking these calls without something to replace it, people will die, people will suffer, and the Met Police will completely fail in their duty to protect the innocent Londoners they're meant to serve. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. I know that I did. I found this quite fun to talk about, and it's really fun to actually explore my ideas about this sort of topic, because, as I said, when I heard this, I didn't really think too much about it. But when I was thinking, oh, maybe I should do a podcast episode on it, so I really started thinking about it. When I was in bed, I was thinking, I was actually getting more and more angry about the situation, because this is wrong, and I know so many more people will suffer. I don't know if I've said this in the introduction, but I have asked the BPS and the Division of Clinical Psychology to comment, but they have not got back to me. And to be honest, I doubt they will. So it's interesting, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. So if you know someone who enjoyed today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And if you wanted to learn more about police psychology and why the police behave as they do, please check out Police Psychology, available in all the usual places. And if you wanted to become a patron of the show, then please go to patreon.com/the Psychology Word Podcast. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at conwhiteley.net. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time.